decisions, and cast a vision to create a business for the future. Here's your host, Ross Marino, financial planner, author, speaker, and CEO of Advisor 2X.
Welcome to Outcomes, the podcast. Today, I am joined by Dr. Travis Parry. Good morning.
Hey, how are you doing, Ross?
I am great. I've been looking forward to you being on this show. I read some of your materials. I read your resume and I thought, this guy has figured out time management. I can't wait to ask him a bunch of questions. And on my end, I'm thinking, I've got a ton of questions I want to ask him. I hope everybody else has similar questions, or it might not be a real exciting podcast. But I know that the things we were talking about, it's what we struggle with as advisors. So let me do an intro so people understand why they need to listen to this podcast and why you have insight that a traditional coach or consultant may not have. You're the author of the #1 best-selling book, Achieving Balance. You have several degrees in family and social science, and you did that to better understand stress and goal achievement. You founded the Make Time Institute. And I got to say, when I went to that website, it just sucked me right in. I just couldn't get off those pages. It was excellent because it's designed for financial professionals, people like me, business owners. We're all trying to achieve that work-life balance. And I guess no matter how much we do, there's really no set definition of balance. So we have to figure that out on our own. So it's something you really got to work through. And on top of all this, you're a homeschooling father of 6 incredible children and the husband to one amazing and talented wife for 18 years. You have your hands full and you're obviously getting it done. So I know you know how to do the balance and manage your time to do all that. So looking forward to hearing what you have to say today.
Thanks, Ross. Work in progress. But yeah, we're trying to figure it out.
I'm going to start with must-dos. And the reason I want to start with must-dos is this is like a Captain Obvious statement. You should have your 2, 3, 4, whatever your number is. You should have a few must-dos every day, and that will help you be more productive. I do that myself to a certain extent. Other people do it. It's a Captain Obvious statement. I get that. Maybe the sweet spot's 3 or 4. I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, but I may not always have 3 must-dos. There may be days where I don't think I can put anything on the list for a must-do. It looks like a 0 day to me, or maybe just a 1. And I've always struggled with, how do we integrate this to know that on certain days, I've got a hard must-do list that's uber productive. And on other days, I need to be a little more flexible. So help me understand that.
Yeah, let's break it down a little bit. So we all know the Stephen Covey quadrants of how to be productive and effective. And, I was a student of that, really love Covey and his principles. And I found that a lot of times trying to do those and follow through was difficult. I could plan it well, I could put it on the calendar, but actually carrying it out was quite ridiculous. In fact, oftentimes I'd catch myself back in the day of paper files, like taking my paper files from one side of the desk and feeling so good about myself when I got them to the other side, right? It was like, oh, I'm so great. Look at me. When it really comes down to it, the Make Time method, which I outline in the book, Achieving Balance, the Make Time method is all about being incredibly productive at work and making the time to have those really important things in your life outside of work so that you can have boundaries and have balance. So inside of work, the way you're supposed to be uber productive, as you mentioned, is to find those 3 to 5 activities that you normally do on average that are the most important. And I call it the work or the business sweet spot, just kind of like hitting the baseball, hitting the golf club, the hockey puck, whatever, in the right spot. You just feel like it's effortless. I literally did this same exercise last night because I tried to update on my own. I have my own business journal here, and I wrote down the 5, 6 things that are most important to me: marketing my book, producing LinkedIn videos, having a business summit that I'm doing, working on publishing my book, public speaking, coaching. If I just do those things and I delegate, automate, and delete everything else, I'm in my sweet spot. So the next part of that, part 2 to your question is, well, what do I do on a daily basis? Which one is, at the top, or which one should I do as a must do? I create a business ideal calendar from that sweet spot. And I like to have a theme for each day, or at least every half day, and block it into chunks. You and I were talking pre-show, like, hey, Fridays, like neither of us take appointments. We do podcasting, we do media, we do the same stuff. Otherwise, if we're going from one thing to another, even in our sweet spot, we might get caught up multitasking, background tasking, switch tasking, and wasting our time. So I really am a firm believer in having an ideal calendar that does have that set out for, half day at least chunks of time.
And I want to talk about the calendar. That is one of the changes I made years ago where I really instituted time blocking and found that my productivity increased dramatically. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, I do client calls and appointments. Mondays, there's a lot of planning. Friday, I like to do this, and then I play hooky. By lunchtime, I'm texting my wife saying, "What are we going to do? What's going on? What are you doing?" So I'm useless by 2 or 3 in the afternoon on Friday. I'm good with that. I'm useless at work, so it's a different shift. But with the time blocking, I know we have to stay focused, and I know we have to try not to do many things at once. We've learned the multitasking doesn't work. But I want you to talk about when we go through those switches and what it does to us, because I found with myself, if I try to switch contacts, if I take 2 or 3 client calls and then sit down and I try to do analysis in between my next client call, you have just sucked the life out of me. And I need 3 or 4 cups of coffee. I just feel the drain. And that analysis shouldn't be that hard. But I know my brain shifted and I tried to work on something else and I struggled. Can you walk us through why that really is such an issue?
Yeah, psychologists have termed multitasking, as we say in the popular psychology world, multitasking. We actually don't multitask. You can background task those things that are easy to do, but if there are tough things like analysis and a phone call, you can't do those simultaneously very well. If you do, it's jumbled and you end up emailing somebody what you meant to speak to another client. It just gets bad, right? You know that. But it's this switching from one task to another. Your brain literally has to pull information from a different part. And so in so doing, you have time where your brain is trying to connect, it's trying to move to a different activity, and that time actually costs you. It costs you an energy, as you already discussed. It also costs you an attitude. For me, I like to have different playlists. I'm a music junkie, and I like to have things, music trying to help me. If I'm feeling like I need to pick me up or I need something to help me with a little bit of anxiety, I'll play some uplifting music and it'll help me to switch. When I go from working to home, I switch and change my clothes. I wear either my button, down shirt, my polo, whatever, so that my kids know, as I work from home, that daddy's working, right? And so I'm in the mode. But when I change, I go into my casual clothes, that allows my brain to remember, okay, I'm at home, stay out of the office, right? So we need to do these things to not only help our brain to prepare, but also protect that calendar so that we're not tempted to go back. People talk all the time about laptops, how great they are, cell phones, how awesome. Yeah, they can be awesome, they can be great, but they can also be a really big drain on now we're at home, but are we checking our email on our phone at work? Are we checking, on our clients? Are they calling us? And are we on our laptop surfing the internet for deals, or are we working, right? So that's really important to make the switch and be able to be there and be present.
So how did you know that right before I jumped on the Zoom call, I was actually searching for deals at Best Buy? Come on.
I got the same email.
But on Friday, it's cool. I can do that.
Okay.
Right. My brain isn't cranking there. So the context switching, so hard, really costs you on energy. Glad I learned that. You said something that I hadn't quite thought about before, and it just opened my eyes to the top 3 of the day. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, let's say, I may have 8, 9, 10 phone calls, Zoom calls, back to back or close to back to back. That's my day. I don't know what other people are capable of doing, but after that, I'm cooked. I have nothing else to offer at the office. I've got to go home. So on those days, I often don't have anything on the top three because I know I'm not going to do anything other than what I'm doing. But the fact that that's one of the core functions of running my business and being an advisor, I think I should just put that in number one and say client calls today. And if there's no number two or three, that's okay. But just recognize that, no, I'm doing exactly what I need to do because it's my job. It's my highest and best use. Shouldn't I make that switch?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no to me, my response would be to you is that sounds like that should be one of your top five, one of your sweet spot activities, if it's not already. That's what you do, in your business. For me, Thursdays is my coaching day. Half of Tuesday is my coaching day. Wednesdays, part of Tuesday, is when I'm doing, pre-coaching calls, seeing if there's a good fit for my client, for new clients. Monday is all of my operations typically. Can I squeeze in other things if needed? Sure. I try to have that Pareto principle in mind of the 80-20. I should be 80% in my sweet spot most days. 20%, it's okay to, squeeze a couple of things in here or there. If it's the other way around, you are wasting your time. You think you're an advisor, but you're really, wasting time on social media or a news consumer. But those are the things I find the biggest issues for advisors. But if you can make that switch and be 80-20 the other way around, you're going to be incredibly effective. I've also found that while you're wanting to be there in your sweet spot, those 3 to 5 things, it's really important to know and list those out and then put them into your ideal calendar for the times that make the most sense. Like, for example, if you and I were doing podcasting on Tuesdays all day long, is that really the best use of your time? Or is that really the best time for your clients to be meeting with you? That you have to really reconcile what works for you and your energy and what works best for your clients and who you're trying to meet. And it's got to be a good fit either way.
You have a long resume, you have a doctorate, you have different studies, but you mentioned you listen to music that picks you up. So you must be qualified in that world as well. What do I need to be listening to pick myself up? What does the doctor say?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I don't have a doctorate in music or music theory. My wife studied music theory for a little bit, but I just think we love music in our home. Music is a great motivator. It's a great way to help you remember things. Music got me through my PhD. I'm not really an amazing natural writer. It takes a lot of my energy. In fact, writing this book, granted, it's a different kind of writing. Writing Achieving Balance is totally different than my dissertation. But if you've heard of the Piano Guys, they are classic music meets rock and pop, and they mix it all together. It's so amazing. They literally got me through my PhD experience in my dissertation because I could throw that in the background and it would allow the right kind of energy. And I think that's really important to know. Like, what is it for you? I remember as an advisor getting this advice from one of my managers saying, hey, before you come in, pump up the music, put on your Rocky, whatever it is to get you energized. And that's good. But so I kind of have a playlist for the moods that I'm in or what I need to do to get me going in that right, direction. Music has been found to help you to remember, those of you studying for different exams, the right kind of music, especially classical music, things that are playing in the background. As you replay that after you've tried to memorize things, they come back to you. So it can help you to remember things, but it also can help put you in a really good mood for what it is you're trying to accomplish that day.
The Piano Guys are great for studying and working. And I learned years ago that music in the background, if it doesn't have lyrics, is great for focus, right? But when you hear the lyrics, now your brain keys in on those and that distracts you. So I've definitely found that. And what works for me is when I'm driving home from work, I actually put on the blues. I'm a drummer and I love drumming the blues. Now I have to skip a bunch of songs if the words are real bluesy, because you listen to what some people are going through and that doesn't connect with me. But that music, I love it. It's my transition music, and I just walk in the door and I'm feeling the groove and it's great and I'm happy. I mean, it really moves you. But the Piano Guys are great for the background there. Now you've mentioned your book, I'm looking forward to reading it. Can you give us some just a little background and tell us why you had to write that book?
This is a book that I've been trying to write for 15 years plus. And as I was thinking about writing this, and actually the whole reason for this is I was a financial advisor, and my father was 49 years old. I was 26, and new to the industry, full-time working a couple of years out of college. He just saw me graduate. My dad and I were really close, and we mountain biked a lot together. That's kind of our thing. That was our passion, that we, had joint. And he also was my soccer coach all through the years. He never knew what soccer was. It was kind of like, wait, what is this thing? All of a sudden, all of his kids are playing, and he wanted to coach us. At one time, he was coaching four of us. He was one of those guys, always very involved in our life. And all of a sudden, my life totally changed when he passed away from a heart attack on a mountain bike ride. And it was a strange January 9th day, 15 years ago. And that changed my entire family. I was an advisor, again, new to the industry, but had some experience, helped my mom with everything financial, helped her sell her home, make a new life for herself, and set up everything. So here's this 26-year-old kid who is the manager of the estate. And I saw financial planning in a whole different light. My dad was my first life claim, death claim, my life insurance policy claim. And I had to see that through and help the family. And I did a lot of thinking and a lot of wondering, like, is the financial industry really where I should be spending my time? My father had 49 years. What if I only got 50? Is this it? Should I be doing this? And I slowly evolved, left the broker dealer I was at, became independent, started coaching and doing some more things, and realized, you know what? This whole idea, the reason why I'm in this industry was to have a great life balance, but I don't really have it. It wasn't built in. It was work hard nights and weekends until you get to that point where you can have more relaxed life. And I find that a lot of advisors get stuck in that workaholic trap. And I did something about it. And it led me out of the industry and into academia and trying to figure this out on my own so I could come back and give back to the industry. So in my opinion, Ross, this is my gift to the industry. This is my giving back. This is my way to help. And of course, I coach and speak and try to get the word out. I really want to help others have the kind of quality of life that my father had, and be able to say at the end of his life, like I was able to say about him, that he lived it to the fullest, that he lived his life on purpose. That's my tagline: live life on purpose. So this is really my gift to the industry and a help. It's inside the book, there's 12 steps of how to achieve balance, better productivity, and have it all, business and personal goals. And there's no reason why you can't, especially the industry that we've chosen to serve and be a part of. So those that want to get a copy of that, go to achievingbalancebook.com. I've got a free PDF copy right now. And if you jump on that list, I'll let you know how to get the PDF for shipping only as soon as it comes available in March.
You have a lot of practical advice as well. You talk about how to manage email and talk about how to manage distractions. And when I think of being distracted, what was the book? Indistractable. You know the book Indistractable? So I read Indistractable. Excellent book. I can't pull the author's name out right. Nir Eyal, Nireyal. Does that sound right? Is that who Indistractable?
So.
Yeah, great book. Yep, great book. It's we'll put it in the show notes. And as I went through that book, I thought of all the distractions out there, but as you take time to go through it, you realize the problem isn't the distractions. It's not an external problem. The problem isn't my cell phone. And if someone keeps looking at their cell phone, they're like, oh, that phone distracts him. It's not the phone. I want to be distracted. That's why I keep getting distracted. Sometimes it's because I'm bored, but other times I may just be avoiding what I want to do. Talk to us a little bit about how distractions work and how to approach that so we can be more productive.
We talk about switch tasking, multitasking, and the reason is why we even have that tendency is a lot of times kind of the ADHD tendencies that we may have as business owners, or the world that we live in is really gearing us to trying to look at shiny objects. We have shiny object syndrome, squirrel. We get distracted. And I think you combine people who, are good with relationships, financial advisors, right? Who are technically savvy, who are interested in what's going on in the world. And you have a perfect, I guess, you know, um, catastrophe waiting to happen, because people that are like us can be easily distracted, can be easily wanting to try and do all these things at once. We want to help our clients. We want to be a good business owner. We want to know what's going on in the news so we can help all of them. But we have a struggle with being distracted from those things that are really important. So again, yeah, you can go create an ideal calendar. You can block those out. You can do all of these things and set it up and plan it, but how are you actually going to achieve that? One thing that I suggest is something called processing. I take a half an hour to an hour every day and I clean out my email, my voicemail, my text, my notifications, everything that I've got set up. Now, most business owners have 30 plus of these distractible areas and call them collection points. Okay, in the book, I teach you how to make these down to about 6. About 4 to 6 is where I'm at on a given day. And so I've got it very organized. That allows me to quickly go through and find all of the things I need, like the questions for today's podcast, getting organized constantly for different things I'm doing every day. If I was just going from one thing to the other, it would be easy to get sidetracked. It would be easy to be distracted. So some of that is your own organization. And some of it maybe is your desire to be distracted because you don't like what you're doing, you're bored or whatever. But I would say a lot of it comes from not being organized properly and not having this time to process every day so that you can actually get done what it is you need to. And then you've got all those things taken care of. Then you can be in your sweet spot and focused. And your mind can say, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it at 3 o'clock, or I'll take care of that at 10 o'clock when I get in, when you do your processing time.
You talk about accountability being one of the most important factors of being productive and executing. I understand that. I agree with that. If I'm a business owner, or if I'm, let's say, a solo advisor, I'm in a smaller practice, it's going to be a little harder for me to have someone that I'm accountable to. Now, some people may say, well, I'm accountable to my husband or my wife, and they do it that way. I don't want to go home and talk shop. So if I'm a solo advisor, the last thing I want to do is go home and my wife says, how was your day today? Give her the list of here's everything that went on. I don't want to do that. I was just jamming to the blues. I'm feeling good. I walked in the door, dog's barking, cat's meowing because it's hungry. Hopefully there's some kids around. The last thing I want to do is rehash my entire day. So that accountability process doesn't work for me. So what do I do if I'm a solo advisor or I have a smaller practice and I really don't report to anybody?
Yeah, let's break that down. So in the last part of the book, I talk about the myth of personal development. The myth of personal development, not that personal development is important, that you shouldn't have it, but really there's 2 aspects of this. There's professional, and there really is personal outside of work, right? And that personal development is, maybe hobbies, things you want to accomplish. Maybe it's health-wise or spiritual, whatever. The professional development, it's important to have a coach. It's important to have a manager or someone, at least a group. I've interviewed a lot of different individuals on my podcast, the Balanced Advisor podcast, and I found that it's really important for advisors to have a group of like-minded advisors can help them go the same direction. So that's professionally, there's a lot of options to be professionally accountable. However, what about being accountable for being balanced? So in that realm, and the reason why I did a PhD in family and human development and not, an MBA or other things that would help maybe on the business side, was because I actually found, as I was coaching advisors and coaching business owners, that the key to them not going back after 90 days of working with them to their old habits of being distracted and not balanced was actually their spouse. So let's explain how this works. Well, as you know, you might not come home and say, honey, this is what happened. Here's all my clients. Here's a great podcast interview I had with this Dr. Parry guy. You might not do it. Maybe you will. I don't know. You don't want to talk shop. However, what she might help you do is, hey, honey, you came home at noon. That's wonderful. That's when we talked about, let's go and do something fun. Like, that's the accountability. It's not the ball and chain. It's not, passive aggressive. It is working together to help keep you balanced. So that's what I talk about when it comes to accountability. Inside the business, I think there's other options, again, groups, coaches, managers, etc. For those solo advisors, you are, not necessarily an exception. I think you're becoming, a bigger part of the industry, but you can easily have another solo advisor. Maybe you guys decide we're going to have joint accountability sessions once a month and have your own groups. Again, coaches are out there, etc. And for those who aren't married, well, Travis, what about those guys, solo advisors and single? Great, have a family member help keep you accountable. I don't want my brother telling me what to do. I understand. Then find someone who you trust, a friend who can help you to have balance now, so that as you build that business and one day you'll likely get married, you'll likely have a partner. That's what we all actually typically desire, that you will be in the habit and you won't have to make a huge change in your lifestyle.
You mentioned that fear is a big driver to the decisions we make and the actions that we have. So what am I really afraid of that maybe I don't want to admit?
Fear is a really good motivator short term. In fact, I found that fear motivates a lot of people even through the long term, but it's also something that they shoot themselves in the foot on because of this fear. It might drive them. For example, they're afraid to let somebody down. Speaking of family, speaking of relationships, they may be afraid of letting their parents down or letting down family members. Maybe they're the sole provider, and so they've got a lot of stress, and they don't, want to not have, be able to provide for their family. I find that as I interview a lot of advisors, that they either are in two camps. They're in the fear of success camp or the fear of failure. And I like to explain it less of camps and more of like a tree, because those fears, they come from someplace. They have deep roots. And typically those roots are childhood, adolescent, maybe even on the ball field. It's interesting. Every personality is different and their experiences are different, but it's typically from that age in their life. I don't shrink them. I'm not showing them ink blots and having them lay on the couch when I'm talking to them. However, it's really important to self-analyze and get to that point where you can admit out loud, this is where this fear is coming from. So these roots are important to examine. I don't stay in those roots or those weeds, but we actually move up to kind of the trunk. And the trunk of this fear tree kind of starts to begin to spin out into one way or the other for these people. And it's either, again, fear of success or fear of failure. What's a fear of success? Fear of success typically is, well, if I do become successful or wealthy, maybe you have clients that have fear of success. If I become wealthy, then I'll have tax burden, I'll have planning needs, I'll have blah, blah, blah. People will think of me funny. They'll maybe want to have what I have. This fear of success is pretty prevalent. And then the fear of failure on the other side is that fear of maybe even trying, because you're afraid that if you try, you will fail. If you do something, that it won't work out. Imposter syndrome, other things kind of set in this fear of failure zone. What I found is that most advisors who are struggling with balance, they're actually struggling because of fear. They're struggling because they're in one of these two camps, or even both. They may struggle with both at the same time, psychologically, and have some dissonance there. But normally that is something they say, well, this has been driving me, Travis. This fear of failure actually has propelled me to do all these things. Yes, it has, consciously, but subconsciously, it's actually destroying that outcome that you desire. It's keeping you back. It's holding you back. It's blocking you from having success. So I really focus, once I help people be productive and have a great calendar and everything,
one of the main reasons why they don't carry that through, even though they know what they need to do, is all the psychological baggage they're carrying. And that's one of the main reasons I did a master's in psychology, to understand that, understand the behavior behind, the thoughts.
Final question. Give this to all the guests. This is my magic wand that comes from my daughters. You probably have multiple running around your house as well. If I was able to give you this magic wand and you could wave it, Travis, and you could change anything in the world, and it's not related to COVID, but if there's something in the world that you thought, you know what, if I could wave a magic wand, this is what I would like to see happen, what would it be?
Oh man, we're going to go deep on this one, Ross. If I could do it, I'm not God, but I am a believer. It's that world peace. We need, what the world needs now is love, right? I mean, that's really what we all need. It's love. I believe God in our hearts and in our lives. And when it all comes down to, for me, and my motivation to help people live their life on purpose, is because I believe that we're all sent to this earth for a purpose, and this life is purposeful if we allow it to be so. And as we live that purpose in our mission, then it's my strong conviction that we'll feel balanced. And as you mentioned at the very beginning, balance is something we each kind of have to figure out on our own. What is it for us? I found that it's living my top priorities really well in life. And for me, it's spiritual health, physical health, and relationships. When those three are working really well in my life, my work is just, I spend a lot of time here, but it's motivated by those other areas. And, you may have been able to kind of see that as it comes through in my interview and working with me, people see that. But I know that's, if I had that magic wand, that's what I'd be waving.
Thank you so much. Dr. Travis Parry, appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks, Ross. I loved it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Outcomes. Subscribe now to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Advisor 2X. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.